for decades. Julia Grosso from Vancouver to win it for Canada! Canada came! Canada conquered! Canada gold at Tokyo 2020!
You're listening to the Northern Futbol Podcast, your home for everything Canadian soccer, with Brendan Dunlop, Alex Gange-Ruzic, and here's your host, Ben Steiner.
Hey there, folks, and welcome back into the Northern Futbol Podcast, episode 189 of Northern Futbol here on the Nation Network. Ben Steiner alongside Brendan Dunlop and Alex Gange-Ruzic, but not really alongside today because Brendan and Alex are back in the studio, and I'm still in Toronto. Who would have thought that I'd be the one stuck in Toronto?
You really think that, you were the underdog favorite to be stuck in Toronto?
I mean, I would assume it's you. You're the one who, has grown up in Ontario and has roots here. I've got no roots here just yet, but I would have assumed that I would be back. But I'll be back in Vancouver for a little bit soon. But Alex, how's it going?
I like the contrast of we got Ben here at air traffic control again, back with the mic. He's in the cockpit and he let the two goofs in the cabin. Let's see what we can cook up.
I do feel like we can run wild though, right? Like it's hard enough to host a show with me. It's got to be harder to host it when you're remote completely. So this will be fun. But yeah, man, it's nice to be in your hometown, bro. It's you know me. Every time I come here, I like it a little bit more. I got to fly out here alone with the boy. That was something. You experience fatherhood at a whole different level when you are a solo traveling parent. Shout out to Jet West, because they don't pay me to say it fully. They are like the commercials where the employees do care because they are owners. I had a phenomenal experience, and the staff deserves all the credit. I never shout out corporations, but that was.
I thought you were about to blast.
No, bro, they were incredible. I went to I was at the check-in desk first, not check-in, at the gate. I went to the gate first, just as they were about to start calling people. And I said, "Look, I got this little one. It's just me and him." She's like, "Yeah, sweet, come on." I'm like, "No, I got to be the last person. He's a toddler. I got to be the last." She's like, "Yeah, no problem." And I'm like, "But please, I got this bag. I just need enough space for this backpack." She's like, "I got you." And I'm like, "There's no way she's got me. She's focused on something else. She doesn't have me." She had me, man. I was the last person on the plane. Space was there. It was fantastic.
That's pretty smooth.
It was smooth, man. It was smooth. Little guy was great. Had the plane laughing. You got to distract the little ones with the safety exercise, right? This is perfect. It's like a show for them, right? But he's distracted. He's settling in. We haven't been on the plane long enough. It's like he's not paying attention to the English show. En français. All of a sudden, front row seat, right? He's looking. They're ready to explain. They go, avec l'emergency, whatever.
En cas d'urgence.
I knew it was l'emergency point, as did half the plane. And so the timing is incredible because as she's about to warn us for the emergency, he yells out, "Oh, no!" and holds this long no, and half the plane's roaring with laughter. So anyway, I made it to Vancouver, boys. We miss you, Ben, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that it was a good laugh-filled flight.
Yeah, I'm saying sounds like we got an emergency fill-in podcast host already. Comedic timing is on point.
If there's any Western Airlines, we can have a conversation or conversation.
Maybe we need some audio drops from Rock because we had an audio drop from Percy, my dog, last year. Whenever Alex or Peter would say that that player's got that dog in him. And we'd have Percy come in and go ruff, ruff. So I don't think we've got that anymore. So maybe we've got to get something new.
We'll find out.
Oh no, could be very useful for a lot of things like that penalty shootout against Germany. Oh no. Oh no.
Ben's away. It's just Alex and Dunlop. Oh no. That would be fitting.
Appreciate it. We'll dive into some of the news. We'll start off with the Canadian men's national team. No news on a potential September squad, but as has been rumored, the CanMNT will play Panama in a home friendly at BMO Field in October. That's going to be the same night that the Whitecaps take on the Portland Thorns in Vancouver, so a little bit disappointing on that front, but there's not much flexibility in terms of international windows, especially on the men's side. They also remain in discussions about potentially filling that second slot in the October window, although opponents are hard to come by. Appreciated the communication from Canada Soccer that they are trying to fill that second window. But Panama, not exactly an exciting opponent. It is exciting to see them say that the tickets will be $25, though, because hopefully they can get a crowd out for that. And then, of course, we'll see if the big names come out for Canada given it's just one game against Panama for now.
Yeah, I mean, Panama's at least good opposition. It's not sexy because we're so used to them. It's a familiar opponent, but like it's a decent side, right? They were the runners up at the Gold Cup. They made the semifinals of the Nations League, to which Canada beat them. They're one of those teams we always think of as like on the bubble to be the other Concacaf qualifying team in most World Cup qualifying cycles. Unlike some of the other Central Americans, they're not really on a bad dip right now. They're not at a bad rebuilding cycle, so it's good competition. It would have been nice, if it was. To be honest, it'd be amazing if Jesse Marsh's first game on Canadian soil was against the U.S., but I think we all knew that wasn't going to happen, so I'm all right with Panama.
Yeah, we also have to just remember the circumstances, because I obviously saw, you kind of just see Panama and you get a bit bored, but the reality is they just got no favors for them with this window. South America, of course, CONMEBOL, they're getting set for rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of qualifying there throughout the fall. Those are some big games. Mm-hmm. They're out of commission. Africa, they got AFCON qualifiers, so everyone's got to be an AFCON qualifier. So that rules out pretty much any team in that regard.
Maybe you get Mauritius. That'd be way more exciting.
I mean, yeah, Mauritius versus Panama. Talk about the travel costs. So that's not really on the table. You go over to Asia, they got World Cup qualifiers, and so all the heavy hitters that you'd want to play are still pretty much involved in that, so there weren't really any big upsets. And of course, UEFA, they got Nations League. Mm-hmm. They're back to groups of 4 for that, and that's so there's no like potential. Oh, this team has no games this window. No, everyone plays in Europe as well. So unless you want like someone from Oceania, maybe you can get a New Zealand in for. Yeah. But I don't know if they'd want that right now with the relationships between federations. So
I mean, they'd probably be down at triple the price. They'd probably be down for that, especially since they know they're the only ones.
Yeah, exactly. So it was pretty much just 4 teams were available. It was Canada, Panama, U.S., Mexico, because they all got to buy for CONCACAF Nations League, and that's kind of why they're all playing each other. You see that Mexico and U.S. booked another friendly this time at the Azteca in October, so it's just kind of going to be a whole mingling of those 4 teams playing each other. And if there is another friendly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like that, like maybe a second Mexico game or maybe a second U.S. game.
I think a Mexico game or a U.S. game could actually be more exciting to have that in Canada. Of course, Canada already has those games scheduled away, but also that Mexico-U.S. game, Mexico's finally going to play a home game at the Azteca. Like, feels like forever.
When's the last time the U.S. played a non-U.S. friendly against a team like Mexico? Feels like it's always U.S. Mexico in U.S.
Yeah, I mean, even you look at MLS Leagues Cup and the home teams for Mexico were playing in Houston. I think Tigres hosted a game at NRG Stadium. So it's certainly weird to see the U.S. playing an away game in CONCACAF finally.
I did think, though, for Leagues Cup, not to totally deviate off of this, it was smart to do that. Like, they did it in markets where it was an easy sell for
sure.
Fans of those Mexican teams. And, yeah, Austin was like a pretty one-sided Tigres, and it probably wasn't half full, didn't really look half full. But at least, like, it seemed like a pretty sweet experience for those Tigres fans, like, in Central Texas, or at least that came out. So I thought that was cool. I still can't believe that it's 4 MLS teams in the semis again.
So hear me out, though. They played Tigres home games at Estadio Universitario in Monterrey.
It's different.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, I think so.
But
no es posible ahora. Maybe in 5 years, bro. Maybe in 5 years.
Yeah, so they should do a Leagues Cup only in Mexico. Where would the Whitecaps hub stadium be? or TFC or Montreal in Mexico?
Tijuana, maybe? I don't know.
So you feel like Toronto would be like Cancun.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Get
all the expats.
Yeah. Yeah,
Vancouver would probably be like somewhere like Puerto Vallarta or Cabo or something like that.
I feel like the Whitecaps would end up at some like training pitch, like the friendlies that we would see with the women's national team a while back against Mexico, and they're at some training pitch and filmed on a doorbell camera. Like the Whitecaps would be there.
Yeah, probably.
Probably Montreal.
There's some pretty good pitches though, man. I remember those like beautiful mountains. Like I've learned so much more about Mexican geography because of soccer and basically like where Canada soccer have to play when they go to Mexico or train than probably anything else.
And Toronto, of course, going to be the home for Canada moving forward, it seems, with the CONCACAF Nations League as well. Jesse Marsh seemingly setting up camp in Toronto, even though he said that they want to bring the national team around, play some games in Montreal, of course, where he coached with the Montreal Impact back in the day. Could you potentially see that moving, or are they pretty much established in Toronto at this point?
I mean, how many games are we even talking about?
It's just 2. It's just like the October game, and then they confirmed, of course, November.
Yeah.
The November one, I mean, it's not. It makes sense, right? The grass, the travel. We don't have to go into that, but there's always the weather concern, right? Because in November, Toronto, you could get 20, you could get 15, 20, you could get minus 10, minus 15, and that's where you become the question of, will it be an advantage for Canada to be having that in November in Toronto?
I think they've got lucky with Toronto the last few cycles, right? And it was last November, Jamaica, wasn't it? And
that was wet and rainy, wasn't it?
That was wet and rainy, but it wasn't the worst, though.
Cold.
It wasn't, I would argue it wasn't any worse than Jamaica, the qualifier when they clinched.
That was cold.
Like minus 20.
Yeah, that's March. March is never. That's never.
That was Edmonton bad. But I mean, Halloween can be nasty. Like you see that in the CFL all the time too in Toronto. November's not the worst. I don't know. For this cycle, Ben, to go back to your question, I think this cycle makes sense that it's Toronto. I fully anticipate over the next 2 years and before the World Cup is here that there will be a couple of games in Vancouver and a couple of games in Montreal. I can't see why you wouldn't be able to fit some of these friendlies in there, or a Nations League.
This friendly, it is actually a bit surprising. If anything, I'd argue the November one makes sense because it obviously makes sense to have the November, like the game that matters at BMO, just because it's familiarity, etc. Right. But the friendly in October, especially, like, why not Montreal? They haven't had a game in a while. It's grass if that's something you're looking for, right? Because that's, again, where with BC Place. Like, again, it's turf. And what I think with BC Place is they're going to wait because BC Place, of course, is going to get grass supposedly next year for the World Cup. And I bet you once that grass is in, given the size of the thing, they'll want to play a few games at BC Place, especially considering they'll be playing most of their World Cup games at BC Place. But right now, I feel like Montreal would have made sense because when else?
But BMO is the national stadium, right?
Well, for November,
it's not really.
For October, it's a friendly. All the big teams play friendlies in all their stadiums across. It's a friendly. I get for the big, like the November Nations League, but I'm saying for October, is there any really real reason to do it at BMO? Especially the last few, in terms of crowds, the last few at BMO haven't been the greatest.
This is a great debate because BMO was funded as the national stadium, right? Like BMO doesn't get built if Canada Soccer isn't able to lobby all 3 levels of government for it to be the national home for the 2007 World Cup. And then the men shifted there, and maybe your disagreement when I say it's the home stadium is because the women didn't shift there for like a long time. I think it was Herdman might have even left. Was it in between Herdman and Priestman before they shifted from BC? So maybe that's like the feeling. But I mean, it's on the plaque. Like Canada Soccer goes every year to Ottawa to get more money as in NSO, and that that's the letterhead, that's the label that BMO Field is the national stadium. So it's symbolic with Jesse Marsh in this new era. That first game had to be there. I agree with you logistically, and it would have been way cooler to have it in Montreal, especially because of Marsh, but they were never going to do that.
I say, so you tell me England versus, I don't know, pick your random mid-table European team that you got there. Luxembourg, are they too small? So you say playing that at Wembley, that's kind of like, the national stadium in terms of a friendly, right? Like it's
like Luxembourg at Wembley?
Yeah, like in terms of a friendly. I mean, Panama's bigger than Luxembourg, so it's not the right example, but it's kind of giving like England, Romania friendly at Wembley if you're kind of going from the national stadium angle. Again, for friendlies, that's the time to really move it around because then you get stuck in a cycle.
Second friendly. I mean, there are going to be a lot of friendlies, right, for the next 2 years. There should be more friendlies than competitive games, right?
Yeah.
No,
because Concacaf, and they got Nations League seemingly every year.
Wow. It's friendly with a label, let's be honest.
Cap tie, guys.
That is the important thing, especially considering I got a release today about some former Canadian men's national team players saying that Canada should go cap Daniel Jebison. Probably a good call to do that, considering his ability to come back so far. And, of course, Lucas Koleosho, another important one to want to go and cap. But Moise Bombito rising through the ranks, finally getting his transfer to Nice secured. Massive coup for him, for the men's national team. It's seemingly like Liga Canada instead of Liga McDonald's at this point. But the question from Dan Clark 999: how would you assess the CanMNT center back depth beyond Cornelius and Bombito if one or both of them is unavailable? I still think that position group is fairly weak.
You can answer that real question. I will go 20 seconds on Bombito. I think it's very nice, this move that he's got. You say a coup for him. I think it just shows how important the international stage is for players when you are playing in parts of the world that really are highlight reel scouted, right? And defenders have it way more difficult. And we see this all the time with major tournaments, particularly from players who are not in the top 5 European leagues. They have a major tournament and they get a sick move somewhere. The business seems like pretty good. It's it wasn't insane money, but I thought the valuation for the Rapids was like totally fair. And I also think it's a place where he can develop and you'll really see the best of him there. I don't think it's going to be a place that he struggles or takes a long time to adjust. And hey, I could be wrong. It's a totally different level. But I do think, much like when we've seen players go to Belgium or go to Holland first with an eye for like somewhere else, I think the sky is still the limit with Moise Bombito.
It's a nice transitory kind of phase where it's like you can stay at Nice for 5-10 years and you're not mad at it because it's a Europa League adjacent club. This year they've pushed in the Champions League. There's probably a reality where they push for a few titles, and especially with the future of the league after Mbappe's left, we'll see. But also you could still move on, right?
Yeah.
You can it's all up to him in the sense that he'll be as good as he can make himself. And what I like about the Nice move is that he'll play. They had 2 center backs on their squad when I checked after Todibo's sale. So Bombito coming puts 3. I think that gives him a chance of playing versus some of the other options that he had available to him. So it's good. And I mean, to answer Dan Clark's question, yeah, there's a drop off, but I think that's expected, right? That's a lot of national team positions that when you lose some of your top guys, there is a drop off. I don't think it's that outrageous of a drop off because I think you have to remember Kamal Miller's right there, and Kamal Miller at the end of the day, he was someone who was he could, if the dominoes fell for him in terms of contract, in terms of how everything worked out, there's a reality that after that 22 World Cup, he maybe goes through a similar path to a Cornelius, right? Where Cornelius goes from MLS and he goes through the journey of a Greece and a Sweden to Marseille. Like, you have to remember that Cornelius path was so wavy compared to like a Bombito one where it was just like so quick, right? College, MLS, you're at where you want to be. But Kamal Miller wasn't far off. It was just never the right time in terms of his Montreal contract. They trade him, and now he's kind of in a position where he's never going to leave. I don't think his quality's changed because I think he's someone you're very capable when needed to step up. You saw at Copa America, he was very capable. And I think around him there are enough guys like a Joel Waterman who I think you could rely on if called upon. You can't forget a guy like a Lucas McNaughton, and of course there's going to be some more young guys kind of pushing in over the next few years. So of course it's a drop-off to go from Liga guys to other guys, but it's not that big of a drop-off, I'd suggest.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kamal Miller there, and Kamal Miller might have been a victim of Lionel Messi in some ways because he signs that new contract with Miami because why wouldn't you want to stick around Miami with the way things are going there, and then he gets traded. And now he's stuck in MLS, he's stuck on this contract, whereas he probably, if he were with another club, would have looked to Europe. And that's something that he could have done, but given the chance to play with Messi, Busquets, Suarez, the stars at Miami, like that's not an opportunity you're going to pass up as most players, especially a Canadian center back that hasn't had that opportunity. So I think he was a bit of a victim of that. And then, of course, like you mentioned, the young players, like Luc de Fougerolles could potentially be there. Not yet, but soon-ish, if he manages to get some first-team minutes as well, especially.
It's not that crazy to think that Luc de Fougerolles is playing at 26 and maybe like
for sure
his coming out party the same way this Copa was Bombito's.
2 years, plenty of time for center back. For Bombito, 2 years ago, he was pretty much starting his NCAA career. Not 2 years ago, or 2 years after, he's about to play in Liga.
The craziest thing about Moise Bombito is that he's not 20 or 21.
No, he's a little late bloomer.
That he's 24, 25 this year, turned 25.
These stories don't happen for guys his age.
No, man. It's cool. It's pretty nice. I'm going to use that a lot, guys.
It's a nice city, too. Can we talk about, Colorado, lovely place, not to knock Colorado, but
Denver
going to Nice.
Commerce City, Colorado, though. Like, he wasn't in Denver.
That's why he's like...
Everybody lives in Denver.
I was seeing the videos of him doing the kit, walking around the city, and he's probably sitting there thinking, wow, I've made it big. Forget even, the club, just the city as a guy in his mid-20s to move to. It's not bad.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the name, but there was a guy that was with Venezia and is now back with St. Louis City. I'm like, what a move that is. You move from Venice to St. Louis. Like, from a non-footballing perspective, that's a little bit of a kick in the gut for him. But a question from MPH Legend 10. What's the timeline on injuries with Ishmael Kone, Tejan Buchanan, Tani Oluwaseyi, and several other Canadian players? If they're not ready in time, can we expect rotation for the September squad call-up? For Kone, it seems like he picked up just a little bit of a nagging ankle injury, I think it was, I read. In training, and he should be back within a few weeks. At least that's what the reports are saying out of France. And then with Buchanan and Oluwaseyi, Buchanan, I would imagine, is not going to be anywhere near this September squad given the nature of the injury. But Oluwaseyi, I haven't heard much on.
Yeah, I think looking at from what I see, Kone, he'll be there. I think it's just minor. I mean, unless we see anything worse. Buchanan, I don't think we're going to see this year. Like, I think you have to remember it's a 4 to 6 month timeline. It happened in the summer. I just think with the way they'll integrate him, the plan will be New Year, like the end of 2024. So maybe like he's back and they bring him in the group for that November window just to have him around the guys. But no, he won't see the field. In terms of Oluwaseyi, I think we'll have to wait and see because it sounds like it's hamstring, and as we know, those are fickle. We don't know if it's a tear or if it's a strain. But it sounds like it's serious enough that like today we're Tuesday and he's already been ruled out essentially for the weekend for Minnesota. So I think there we'll have to just wait another week and see, is it a legitimate like tear or is it a strain? And of course there's a few others to keep an eye on. Junior Hoylett yet to make his full return from injury for Hib. So hopefully potentially that's something where maybe they look elsewhere to bring in some other names, and for the most part, I think a lot of the other guys have, should be pretty good on the health front. But of course, some of them have been on breaks and are dealing with transfer stuff, so it's a bit of a weird time right now.
It's a good point you make though about bringing Tejan in for the camp just to have him around, and I think with Jesse Marsh, I mean, he picked Richie Larea. When Richie Larea wasn't fit, we all thought we expected him to and hoped he was, but it was a no-brainer. He was taking him, and in the past, it seemed crazy. Canada didn't do this, and I think we can all assume it was like budgetary, or maybe it was the undervalued before Daniil Henry went to the World Cup, as a staff member for the 2022 World Cup team because he was injured. But like other countries do that all the time. If you look at how many trips Luke Shaw has been on, he's been on more trips than he's played for England. So like it's a normal thing to do that, and it'd be great if Tejan was able to be there. And man, it'd be great if he's in some type of actual competitive training by then. So it was great to see him walk into the training center at Inter Milan. He's doing a lot of like workouts I think nobody expected him to be doing. Man, if he plays before they take a Christmas break, that's a huge success. And it seems like they're happy to get him back on the field at Inter Milan as quickly as possible. Be great to see him. Great for Canada.
I mean, to get him back and just playing regularly would be massive. Even if he's just training regularly is massive, because then he can work his way into that Inter Milan team, which he hadn't really up to this point. This could have been a bit of a breakout season for him. We're already playing games in Serie A, and he's nowhere near the pitch considering the injury. So just getting him back would be massive for his career as well as the men's national team. But from Night Train 2112 and MPH Legend 10, who do you guys see as our future strikers post David and post Laren? Has to be somebody more than Tani Oluwaseyi. And from MPH Legend 10, with a heavy depth striker pool right now, David, Laren, Ugbo, Tani, Russell Rowe, Brim, depending on role, which uncapped striker might be worth looking at in terms of style? Promise Akinpelu, Luka Kulinovic, or Kwasi Poku? And I think Poku, given the transfer move, is probably the one that comes to mind for me, given his form with Forge and then his transfer now as well.
Yeah, where did he go? Where was the rumor?
I think it was Belgium, no?
Yeah, somewhere in Belgium. But like, what is it? A team that you heard of before?
Not at all.
Exactly. Who else went to Belgium? And some team that we didn't know about? Tristan Borges. Now, look, I hope it's different. I hope the guy lights it up. But I always think about if it's a team that I've never heard of, the chances of you like having some type of upward trajectory rapidly seems unlikely.
I guess, but I also think Poku's a very different player than what Tristan Borges was at that point.
Well, just for what it's
the
worth.
The league's a different league, too. The league's better than it was.
I'd save this for later in the rundown, and we can get to it. But for what it's worth, it's Molenbeek in the second Belgian division. And I agree in terms of, like, I wasn't too excited about the move for Poku itself, just in the sense that I think Belgium's second division, it's a gamble. Liam Fraser made the same gamble, and it didn't really turn out as anticipated. Tristan Borges as well. But on the flip side, I mean, of course, the money is great for Forge and the CPL. We can dive into what that means. But Molenbeek, it's worth noting they're part of the Eagle Group. Crystal Palace, Lyon, Botafogo, etc. And that sounds like there'll be some cash. And the fact that they're splashing out this much money for Poku, some other signings, you do wonder that if long-term the plan's to get them up to the first division, then they're kind of like a Union Saint-Gilloise, where like 5-10 years ago no one knew who they were, and now they're playing incredible football and pushing out talent. So that's for what it's worth for Molenbeek. That you look at the long-term picture, there's some intrigue there, and I think what I'd agree with Ben is in terms of Poku's style, he offers something that none of the guys offer in terms of just in-behind speed, direct play. But I think if I'm going to answer kind of both questions, I'm really liking what I've seen from Promise David so far with Gilloise. To be honest, hadn't seen much of him. I'd heard of him, but I hadn't seen much of him until this move. Had a chance to watch a few of those USG games, and there's a very intriguing profile there. Like, of course, he can score goals. He showed that in Estonia, but he's showing that he can kind of translate that to Belgium. He's a big frame, very, very different as well, but he's got a bit of speed. Very raw. Like, the hold-up play, you can tell, needs a lot of work in terms of the passing. It's getting there, but there's some intangible there where you think, like, okay, there's not really anyone else either who has that profile, because, like, Laren is a big guy, but he doesn't really – Promise David's more of like a true back-to-goal number 9, and we've said that's not really Laren's game. So I think Promise David's one where he feels a lot closer, too, because he's in the first division Belgium. He's playing, and that could really earn him a call soon.
I didn't know it wasn't Gillois. It's Gillois?
Maybe it's, I mean, if it's Dutch pronunciation, maybe I'm butchering. I just kind of go for the French. It's like Gilloise.
Yeah. All right. I when it comes to en français, we trust you. It would be, c'est a bad idea to trust me.
And from Snake Pit 20, is Niko Sigur to the CanMNT gaining any traction? And another from MPH Legend 10 as well. A long shot right now, but based on rumors, if Sigur did commit to Canada, is he competing in the midfield with Eustachio, Kone, Choinière, Piet, or would Jesse Marsh use him to relieve Johnston, Larea, or Buchanan? How does he fit into this team?
Before we get into and reread that very long question, can I just say that unintentionally you have stacked some of the best internet usernames that you have ever ran through an order of, okay? You just went from Night Train 2112 to Snake Pit 20. Like, we are a hilarious casino game right now is what we sound like.
I'm loving it.
I'm loving it as well. Also, very good question. Thank you to all the questions. We appreciate your questions on Twitter. Alex, take it away.
When Alex does build the roundup, as he did today, he uses your Twitter usernames. When I build the roundup, I use the real names if you got that on Twitter. So this is an Alex Bill roundup, and it's certainly a fun one.
It's yeah, no, for sure. It's and genuinely, we very much appreciate all the comments, and they get us on topics that, look, especially with me, we would never get to without the questions. So I'm very appreciative of them.
Oh, 100%. And I like the subjects. It's something to keep an eye on because, of course, those unfamiliar, Niko Sigur, as Ben will remind you, is a former York Lion, so York University Lion. So shout out to the U Sports connection. Grew up in Barnaby, I think it was. He's obviously out playing in Croatia, been playing for the youth national teams, been adjacent to the senior squad. Like, he's been on a few long lists, like as alternates. He got left out of the latest Croatian Nations League squad. He got left out of the latest youth squad. It sounds like there's a bit of an injury there, but you do wonder, right? Because Jesse Marsh has said, I'm pressing dual nationals. In terms of guys that are there that fit a need, Seager's up there because he's, of course, he's been playing right back, for the club team, Hayuk split, but he's a midfielder at heart, and you wonder in terms of number 6 options, how often we've been saying Canada needs that number 6 option, and Seager, you see how a lot of these Croatian players are able to move straight from the league out to a top 5 league. You wonder now that he's got a couple years of reps, if he might be on the cusp of that. I do wonder if Jesse Marsh is taking or is knocking on that door. I don't have anything new to report, although I would just refer to what my one soccer colleague Josh Deming said. He heard a few months ago that Niko Seager's open to Canada. That he's like, look, I'm not going to close that door, because it seemed at first that he was all in on Croatia. And you're like, fair enough, it's Croatia. Can you blame him? But it sounds like the door is open, and you wonder, okay, Jesse Marsh is giving him calls. You look at the long-term midfield, which I imagine is Seager's preferred position. That would make a lot of sense there. So I'd say that's one to monitor. Maybe it's not this window because of the injury implications, But if you're Jesse Marsh, I'd say he keeps knocking on that door, because right now there aren't many other promising young midfielders that you can look at could slot right in. Because I think with Seager, if you can come in, because you got your Kone Ustaka, you could see him slotting in there. You could see him adding to a depth that needs to be built up. Because at right back it's a bit stacked. I don't see that being a fit, but in the midfield it makes sense.
So interesting, right? Like you look at it, he's 20 years old. He's going to be 21 in September, and from Burnaby to Vancouver to Croatia, but he played for York, and then he's playing for one of the biggest teams in Croatia. He's 8 appearances under 21 for Croatia. Like that's what a life that guy has lived already at 21 years old. That definitely shapes a player, shapes a person, right, in some interesting ways. And also I think of guys like that too and wonder, without the opportunity of a passport, is he only CPL? And a few years ago, do you not have that guy because there is no CPL? Like, I always find that interesting when it's like you see someone who's had this pathway and, okay, they maybe have an extra door open because of a passport. How they use it, what comes about because of it. Yeah, we're in a different era, man, of young Canadian players, and that makes it very exciting and makes things a little more complicated in a good way for Jesse Marsh. He's got a lot more to consider. You can tell why he's so excited about Canadian dual nationals.
It is exciting, but I also look at a player like Niko Sigur, and not him in particular either, but the CPL doesn't entirely have the best reputation among the Canadian university ranks. There's a lot of players that will look at it and see that as a professional opportunity, but there's a lot of players, and one that's been selected in the CPL draft before, I won't name his name in particular, that just doesn't want to take on the CPL because there's not money in it. You don't make a lot of money in the CPL, even if you become a star in the league. That there's a reputation of just, Canadians aren't good at soccer, and, that reputation that is still kind of growing out of. I remember, back in the day, like, people didn't rate MLS, and now MLS has kind of moved on from that.
MLS.
Well, like young players.
Sorry to bring it to you, MLSsoccer.com.
Yeah, young players with their aspirations now rate MLS a little bit more than they did, 10 years ago when I was playing youth soccer and playing with some players that had potential outlook. One of them being Ahmed El Ghamdi, who refused to go to the Whitecaps Academy, played men's league, and then eventually looked at the CPL, and we all know where he's gone in Saudi Arabia. But the CPL doesn't entirely have that attraction. Do we all know where he's gone in
Saudi Arabia? I don't know if the people know where he's gone in Saudi Arabia.
We've talked about him enough on the podcast over
maybe.
time.
But I don't think everybody knows. Not was. Oh, and of course, now that he's at is he at Al Ahly? Which one? If he's not at one of the 4 owned by PIF, nobody knows.
Al Ittihad.
Yeah, he's with Benzema.
Damn, what a life.
Yeah.
Playing with Benzema.
But yeah, like the CPL just doesn't have that same attraction as some of the other leagues. That players like a Sigur, if they have that other option, will take that other option. Whereas if they don't have that passport, they might not play in the CPL because it's just not that attractive option right now for a lot of Canadian university players that I've spoken to over the years. That can change. They can develop from that. But the CPL is not that attractive option that I think a lot of us kind of rate it to be. And that's somewhere where it has to change. Otherwise, you're not going to see a player like Sigur, who is at that level in the OUA, in U Sports, and has the ability to go overseas. He might not have played CPL.
It changes with time, though, right?
It's timing, too, right? Because the time he went over, it's like kind of end of pandemic, kind of some weird times, right? Because he went to Croatia, like, what was it, 2-3 years ago, right? So it's kind of like 2021.
Yeah.
Weird times. I think it's circumstantial, and there's many layers to it too, where it's like it's also something that it's on the clubs to do a better job identifying talent in terms of what Jesse Marsh has said, right? Like, because Niko Sigur, if he doesn't have a Croatian passport, maybe this is a Bombito situation where he has to go grind it out at York University, maybe just to get a shot. So I think it's also as much the whole system as it is, say, the CPL in particular, et cetera, because the reality is there's talent in League One and at the university level across the board. It's how are you giving these guys opportunities, especially those who don't have the opportunity, the privilege of, I got a passport, let me go to Croatia, let me go end up at one of the biggest clubs. Because I'm sure there's a lot of other, especially in the GTA, you know how it is out there. Like, there's probably a few other Sigurs out there who are thinking, like, man, if only I could have gotten that shot. Because maybe when they're all playing together, they're thinking, like, I'm better than that guy, right? And that's sometimes the reality.
Did you like Ben's system there by not trying to out the guy that told him that CPL sucks? And then he ends up talking about Anwar El Ghazi there a few minutes later.
Anwar El Ghazi.
Isn't that your boy?
Ahmed El Ghamdi.
Got you. You get my point, though.
I get the point.
Well, right. Now,
Although to be fair, Ahmed played in the CPL. He did play for Pacific. He scored in the Canadian Championship. Like he only played a handful of games, but he did take that step.
I'm just having fun.
Yeah,
with it,
but I do remember the one goal that Niko Sigur scored that kind of sticks out in my memory with York. I was calling the game with former NFP host Thomas Neff, and Sigur scored. I think it was like 115th minute extra time winner against Ryerson in the quarterfinals of the OUA, and that was certainly fun. I remember I was like on an absolute high after that, the highlight of my career at that point. But we'll move on from U Sports stuff, and Alex knows me; I could talk about this all day. But from at TFC Milan fan, how many trophies will Canadian men's players win in Europe across their respective club competitions this season? Over under 4.5. It all depends how Bayern does and if they can bounce back from their season last year.
I'm smashing the over.
Yeah.
Think about Alistair Johnston. This guy's won like back-to-back trebles almost in Scotland.
You might do 4 this year, right? How many paint trophies are there?
I'll go over 2.
There's 2 Scottish Cups and the league. That's where I think that Johnston should get it. I think Davies and Bayern, Davies sticks around. They're getting another trophy this year. I think they've, especially for example, they've been woeful in the Pokal the last few years. I think they're going to try to make a run in the Pokal. I think Eustáquio at Porto as well. It feels like there's always a trophy there in terms of how good they are in the Portuguese Cups. They're always a threat.
Major trophies, right? The Supertaça doesn't count. We're not already up 1. Who set this total, by the way? TFC Milan fan?
Yeah.
Bit of a pessimistic total, no?
I'd say pretty pessimistic. I mean, to be fair, we did lose a big one. This one's for you. Do you see where Milan Borjan's going?
No.
He's going
Saudi Arabia.
Oh. Forza Saudi. Okay. Where's he going? What club? It's not a
a big one.
Definitely not a PIF club.
Doesn't stick to the top of my
It's
head.
the team that plays in Dammam.
I'll find it for you.
Yeah,
But
we'll get it in a
because
second.
he was always good for one, of course, at Red Star, then last year at Slaven Bratislava. So that's one that we can't count on as much as anymore. He's going to Riyadh. Or I don't know.
No. I didn't realize they had another team.
Yeah, it's just straight up Riyadh.
Wow.
The more you learn.
I tell you.
Get your bag, Milan. Get your bag.
Yeah, honestly, but good on the guy. Get your bag. He's 36 years old. I didn't even realize there was just a Riyadh FC.
I think they're newly promoted. That's why.
News. Say I wasn't paying attention to Saudi second division, guys. That's it. Yeah.
How dare you?
You have a kid without telling me you have a kid. Didn't have enough room on DAZN.
And moving over to the Canadian women's national team as well, not a lot of news on the CanWNT front, but Chloe Lacasse signed for the Utah Royals, which Brendan has some thoughts on, I'm sure. Alex and I touched on it a bit last week. And Shalina Zadorsky is heading to West Ham, but Brendan, Chloe Lacasse, Utah Royals, not the move I would have liked to see.
Yeah, no, I same, and it's unfair because the NWSL is getting better, and Utah's Utah. They're never going to be one of the attractive destinations, but they can be a competitive team. She's going to get a lot of minutes, and I find it hard to get upset when a player chooses to be closer to home or have a lifestyle that is North American. The reality is she's probably getting paid more than she got at Arsenal, and maybe there wasn't any other competitive options and appealing options in Europe. Honestly, if you looked at some of the salaries that these women's players make in Portugal, you understand why they only want to do it when they're young and leave at the first opportunity. So if there wasn't other comparable opportunities in Europe, I understand. 32, it's weird to say, use the go get your bag line that we just used for Milan Borjan, but that's the reality, and that's why a lot of these Canadian women's players and U.S. players, and not just, we've seen some big English players, right? Like I think Lucy Bronze, and there's a few others off the top of my head that I'm surprised are on NWSL rosters, and it's because it's got a great infrastructure, and it's a well-paying league. So I can't fault them for that, but I would have liked to have enjoyed a few more UWCL Thursdays, and they play a lot of Saturdays, right? A lot of Saturdays.
Yeah, well, especially in the later end of the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the Lacasse move, what I'd say is I like the move a lot more next year than I do now. I think I would have liked to see her give another go with Arsenal. But I think at the same time, this Utah team, they are kind of building up to have a good year next year. Like they signed Amandine Henry this year, and so that's a good. Or they got her on trade at least from Angel City. That's a big piece. She's still got a lot of quality in her. And Lacasse has been one of 3 big additions they've made this summer. Mina Tanaka, who I've enjoyed watching for the Japanese national team. They've also got Claudia Zornoza, who has a handful of Spain caps, which, as you know, these days, it's never easy to get Spain caps with that level of quality. It looks like Utah's like slowly building up to really be a force next year. So I think that'll be exciting that Lacasse can be a star in the NWSL, that she can really be the centerpiece. Because that's the one thing at Arsenal. I think especially given her age and when she came in, she's never really going to be a centerpiece. She's never going to be the star. And I think now at Utah, she has the chance to really lead that team offensively. And, heading into her mid-30s, you have to remember, like, it's not yet, because I think especially given her trajectory, it won't happen overnight. The reality is playing week in, week out and being relied on at her age is going to be better than, say, if she was a rotational piece. It might long-term might not have been as good. So I do think on that side, I don't mind Lacasse moving there, especially over the next few years. I think it will age well.
All right, you got me. Vamos Utah Royals. Let's go.
Zoe Burns, they're Canadian, so there's Lacasse not the only Canadian to keep an eye on there.
All right, well, you can expect to see more Utah Royals stories on CanadianSoccerDaily.com.
And, of course, the Whitecaps women in the Concacaf Champions Cup as well. And, Alex, we've watched a lot of this Whitecaps team over the last few years.
I wasn't watching El Salvador on YouTube.
He's saying over the years.
Over the years, this is the League One team, League One BC. You said when you came on the podcast initially, all the way back then, that it was not in your contract to watch League One BC. And here we are. The Whitecaps women are making their way into the CONCACAF Champions Cup group stage. Huge win. They defeat Alianza from El Salvador on a penalty kick from Emily Wong to reach the group stage, where they're going to take on Club America tomorrow night, Santa Fe, and then the San Diego Wave and Portland Thorns. And those 2 last games are going to be real enticing. Like, I can't wait for this. It's incredible that the Whitecaps, teenagers for the most part, have made it this far in the competition already. And I think we do have to temper expectations, because they are not to the level of the San Diego Wave or the Portland Thorns or Club America. Maybe they can get something against Santa Fe, but they would have to do it without 2 of their best players, and Jimmy Perreault and Geneva Hernandez-Gray, who are off to the U20 World Cup, which we'll touch on as well. But Alex, just your thoughts on the Whitecaps making it this far already in the competition.
I feel like at this point, I can't even say I'm too surprised, because just every time I've watched this team over the last 3 years, it's always just like we've yet to see a ceiling. It's like, all right, first it was League One BC, and I remember, kind of funny anecdote, I had the chance to commentate their first game in League One BC. Whoa. And we were talking with one of the Whitecaps people beforehand. They're like, just by the way, on the broadcast, just the team's mostly 15 and 16-year-olds, so they might get destroyed. So if they're down 4-5-0, just be nice on them. They're just kids. And they won that first game. And, the kids are all right. And then they ended up winning the playoff title by the end of the year. And you're like, okay, these kids can play. And then over the next 2 years, they became a dynasty, pretty much winning every trophy ahead of them. And they've just gotten better and better and better. So it's kind of just been all right, whatever you've asked them, can they go win games at that level against adults? Okay, yes, they can. Can they win trophies? Okay, yes, they can. Can they go do it across Canada? Because it was one thing to be in that League One BC silo, and then they went to League One Canada, in the interprovincials. They won back-to-back years. So in a sense, I'm not surprised to see them go out to El Salvador. Of course, it's professional out there. I don't know to what extent, but I still think in terms of this Canadian group, a lot of these players on this Whitecaps team should and will be playing professional very soon, and they showed that. So I'm just excited to see how far away the level is, because I think for what it's worth, there's been a few examples of Maya Jones has had a pretty decent season at the San Diego Wave this year, so she'll be playing her old club. I think I remember seeing her a few years ago in that Whitecap setup. The gap isn't actually as big as I think we'll realize. Certainly, in terms of the overall, the internationals, it'll be a huge gap, and I think, of course, the Whitecaps will struggle against the NWSL sides, but I think especially you're going to see it with a Hernandez-Gray, a Perreault, some of these top Whitecaps players, a DeFilippo who they signed, who I thought was a great signing for them. They'll be able to go out and be competent. They'll hold their own, and I think that's going to be exciting to see. this challenge, because this just is going to open up so many doors. Just think of all the scouts that will be able to watch them just being on this sort of platform.
Right.
What it's going to mean for their NSL team next year. I think I'm just super excited, especially just the team's so young. Like, again, Hernandez, Gray, Perot, they're 18, 17 years old. Like, just to have this opportunity when before it would have just been like play in League One, go college, and then you're not really getting these opportunities unless you're on the national team, I think is super awesome.
You got to think that those two, though, are top of the list for NSL Vancouver.
Oh, it has to be.
They have to be. They deferred their NCAA commitments to stick with this Whitecaps team on this Champions Cup journey. So, like, Hernandez Gray was supposed to go to Auburn, and she's now sticking with the Whitecaps and has said that she might look at professional instead of going the NCAA route.
She pretty much said, she's like, I'm looking at the pro route. She was being very political, but she said, I'm looking at the pro route, so you can read between the lines.
Well, she's not going to Portugal. She gets to stay in the Lower Mainland. It's exciting, man. I was texting with you guys during that game, at the end of that game. Like, I'm super happy that they qualified. It's incredible, for a group of 15 to 17-year-old girls to beat a professional team and go abroad and play in an atmosphere like that, conditions like that. That's such a character build, right? And for a lot of those players, if they get to play on the NSL Vancouver team, be it in the inaugural season or a couple years down the road, like, you got to think they're favorites to win out the gate, right? We haven't seen any rosters for the rest of the other 5 teams, and it kind of feels like Vancouver's got a real edge here.
Well, it's terrifying to think they could sign more, like, on top of what they have. Like, imagine they take a group like this and they somehow get like a Sophie Schmidt just to like mentor some of these young players. Like, that's what I feel like the advantage is, especially with Stephanie LeBay being the GM there, is that she'll be able to call some of her old national team teammates. Like, you want to come lead a bunch of really talented youngsters who just need a bit of leadership to take that next step as professionals.
Let me just derail for a quick second, Ben. I know how much you love this. You know who else is going to build a very competitive roster? I'm assuming based off of association. Marinette Pichon, the former French international, is the sporting director at NSL Montreal.
They do have a good setup.
I think that they will be able to assemble a very good team because they are approaching it from an experienced soccer infrastructure that only really Vancouver kind of has. So,
yeah, I think that the one that's going to struggle in my mind so far is going to be Halifax and then Toronto as well, just because they're approaching it with eyes wide open. They want to learn, but they don't necessarily have that experience. Halifax, I think, is going to struggle to attract players, to be honest, because there's not going to be that sort of come home aspect for many of the players, because there's just not that many players that have made the pro ranks or anywhere close in the NCAA as well, from Halifax and from Atlantic Canada. So I think that's going to be a bit of a challenge. I had actually gone through and built some sort of dream fantasy rosters for each of the teams in the NSL about a month ago, and I showed Alex it. I built it with Brandon Q from Canucks Abroad. And so we've got this whole spreadsheet, and the one team that we couldn't really fill out was NSL Halifax, the Halifax Tide. So I think that's going to be the team that at this point in my very early predictions would probably finish at the bottom of the table.
Let's wait till they all make some signings, by the way.
I haven't announced a freaking player. This guy's way too early predictions for the NSL inaugural. Sorry, Halifax. Yeah,
you don't have a player yet. Neither does Toronto. Neither does Montreal. Neither does Vegas.
This guy's already written a whole Halifax going to struggle for 20 years until Jacob Schaffelberg's daughter turns pro. 18, 19, maybe 20. We're waiting a long time, Haligonians.
I think it's just going to be cool to watch the Whitecaps girls at BC Place as well. Christine Sinclair is going to play a home game for the away team, and it'll be cool to just see that event in a way.
Surely she plays. Yeah. I think that's one where
we assume she's under contract for the away team. Was my point.
Oh yeah, I was saying.
You never know.
That's true. Never know.
You think she's going to play for the Whitecaps Academy? I don't think so. Not in the next month.
No, it's just who knows where things will go. I'm very excited to see these NSL player announcements. And look, I don't think anyone. I'm not out of the ordinary here. I think everyone would love to see Christine Sinclair play in the NSL for one season at least. And there's no better place than Vancouver. Although maybe based off of your predictions, maybe the league has to give her to Halifax. Otherwise, they got no hope for 20 years.
They do have some hope.
Yeah. What's great about
it's still way too early.
Ben, but I just know that Ben's melting back there.
He's just dying.
I feel invigorated when I'm in studio. I can just
I feel
make
the
it harder
energy.
for you to host. Yeah, it's a good energy. I'm also wired because I've been taking care of a baby, and so you guys are adults. I get to speak to adults. It's great.
Did you pull a Jamie Vardy on the way here? Just get a Red Bull. Now you're just fired up to.
No, I didn't. No, you guys bring it out of me. It's you know what it is. It's Milan fan Snake Pit 2301. That's what it is. That's what's got me hyped.
Well, we'll move on to @OzSweeney4. Regular contributor to the questions and another good username. How many League One Whitecaps girls do you think the NSL club will sign to the inaugural roster? And do you think that the League One team is going to be a direct club connection? Vancouver will have one of, if not the strongest squad depth for at least the first couple of years of the NSL. And I think we touched on that. They've also got a bit of a head start in terms of setting up their NSL team in terms of the roster build, even though they're going to be one of the last announcements in terms of branding. So it's going to be exciting to see them sort of build that out and what players are going to be able to graduate to that senior team. And we also found out that next Monday we'll see the brand announcement for the women's team, and they're are likely going to rebrand the entire women's side. So, they're not going to be girls playing for the Whitecaps Academy. It'll be, girls playing for the Vancouver Rise, Queens Academy, whatever the team name might be.
I think the big advantage we're going to see, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see how long it's closed, is that the top level is going to be probably pretty competitive between the 6 teams because they'll all make their push for like the big end players, right? Like national team players. Like Halifax, I think will be able to swing a few, right? For the lifestyle. It's the depth, like the Whitecaps depth that they're going to have of just having these constant. It's shown in League One because what's been fascinating with their League One journey is that every year they lose like 5 to 10 key players because they all go to college. Yet every year there's a whole new set of ones all out of the academy that are just like boom, ready to go at the level. They know the system. They've grown up in it. And I think that's like we've seen in the CPL, right, where these teams are trying to build academies on the fly, and we're finally starting to see guys that have come through these academies come in. The Whitecaps have had this academy for so long that it's going to give them a massive head start in terms of depth. And then, of course, that will allow them to draw some impact contributors as well. I'm not just talking depth, right? Some of those players will star as well, like the Hernandez Grays and the Perot. So that's where I think that could take 10, 20 years to catch up. And I think
for everybody else, you mean?
In terms of academies, because you see it, right? Like with MLS, like it's been 30 years since the league's launch, and now you're finally starting to see it where those academies are matching up to those around the world, right? You're seeing those like, oh, this MLS team beat Arsenal Academy, etc.
Right.
And so the Whitecaps have a clear head start where clearly their academy's at a very high level because you constantly see players churn out and go to different levels, go to top NCAA programs. I think that's where they're going to be a real advantage, and I think that could end up playing out over a good decade or so.
La Masia Lower Mainland. Hey? Who knew? Not me.
And of course, we also got some more NSL news over the last week. The Ottawa Rapid, or Rapid Ottawa, was the 4th team to get their branding after AFC Toronto, Calgary Wild, and the Halifax Tides. Vancouver, as we mentioned, they're soon to follow next week. And the rumor is Vancouver Rise or Vancouver Queens or Summit. Of course, as reported on CanadianSoccerDaily.com. There's your shout out, Brendan. But thoughts on all the branding so far? I do like Ottawa Rapid, but I don't like the color.
Huh. I don't mind the color or the crest at all. I don't love the name.
It's a bit awkward. The no S, it just kind of like you trip on it, like Ottawa Rapid.
Yeah, Amy Walsh said she loves that it's like bilingual. But I think if you're English, I don't think you're thinking that it's French. And if you are French, then is it Rapide Ottawa? So
there's an E anyways. Yeah.
Je suis not le fan of too many monikers, right? Like I really think like I would have been happy with Ottawa FC. Maybe that's boring. I don't know if you could. I'm trying to think like what you could have done to make it bilingual as well. But of all of them, I don't know. I think I like the crest a lot, and I think the name I was a little underwhelmed by the name.
I think so far Halifax is the winner. I think in terms of
crest is awesome.
The name and crest,
name's cool.
It's the most coherent. It makes sense to what's going on. It's original. I find AFC Toronto is just the name is boring, and you look at the colors, the way it's kind of aged. Like, it's very like monochrome, right?
Yeah, you said that. I like the crest though. I think it's a bold crest. I think it's clean. Sweet on a hat.
It's just
in a shield, in a circle. You guys are like you just hate shapes.
It's something's missing there, but we'll see how it ages. Calgary Wild, the name again a bit awkward.
But it's a bold ass owl.
The owl. See, I like the logo.
I like the owl
the logo is great on that one. The name just is a bit trippy. Ottawa, I think the logo is great, but then again, it's the name. It's the same. It's Toronto, Calgary, and Ottawa. That's kind of what I'm watching for. And what I am a bit worried about is that a lot of the colors are kind of similar. I have them right up in front of me. Brendan's looking.
Yeah.
Like 4 of them, and so far you kind of got 2 more blue and you got 2 more red.
You're thinking that Montreal's red because of the branding video.
And then Whitecaps are likely, bluish because that's kind of their thing. It's kind of make, you need like a Pacific FC that's purple, right? Like just to come in with a bit of a different splash, or like a Hamiltonian orange like you saw in the CPL. It would be nice to see maybe a bit of a different.
Wait, isn't Halifax purple and teal?
Yeah, but it's the teal pops a lot more. So I'm hoping they lean a bit more on the purple side. Because looking at it from like these 4, it looks a lot more blue than it does.
Home and away, come on. You're gonna go one teal, one purple.
Well, they're gonna need to because everyone else will be wearing red.
In other news, the Canadian under-20 squad released their squad for the U20 Women's World Cup, which kicks off at the end of the month. Olivia Smith headlines that team as she gets set for her second U20 World Cup. Amanda Allen, Geneva Hernandez-Gray, and Belchuku and Claire Logan also on the roster as some of the standouts. And Chuku had the start for Notre Dame against Michigan and scored after playing 76 minutes. It was her first collegiate goal in the 2-1 loss. And of course, we also saw some growth in the U.S. women's game this week with the launch of the USL Super League, another women's pro league in the U.S. But just your thoughts on, this Canadian women's roster, as well as, more growth in the women's game.
You want to go quick on the roster?
Yeah, I think in terms of the roster, Smith, it's fascinating. I think that they were able to get her in as a pro. I think that's going to be a huge just advantage because she also played at that U20 World Cup. I might need to be corrected if I'm wrong. She scored at that World Cup.
No, she scored. Yeah, that was her breakout kind of window. Yeah,
and that's I think that's huge to just have that experience. Like she's going to wear the armband. Hopefully, she plays 90. And I think there's some good players around her. I think it's cool that her and Amanda Allen are both pros.
Yeah,
because again, that's baby steps. Because in 4 years, because 2 years it's going to be too soon. But it's nice to know in 4 years. Hopefully this squad, if all goes right, is 80% pros, 100% pros, because they'll all be playing NSL. But it's nice at this point that they're slowly, whereas the last U20 team, there weren't any pros at all, I don't think. That was a huge talking point. So it's nice that there's a few now, especially one of the level of Smith and Allen. And, of course, it's nice to have some of these players like Geneva Hernandez-Gray we talked about earlier. Annabelle Chukwu has been fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
Claire Logan's been one as well in the Whitecaps system. I think will play a big role at center back. It's nice that a bunch of them have familiarity with each other from the U17 and U20 cycles, and it's nice that a bunch of them are playing in top college systems or even at the pro level.
Your point on where the women's game is going or growing, one thing that I like and may have gone under the radar is I like that San Diego named Landon Donovan interim because it's got more people talking about the NWSL. It's got people talking about him, and there's a lot of cool synergy there. Caitlin Sheridan has proven she's one of the best goalkeepers in the world and certainly one of the best in NWSL. Alex Morgan is one of the best female players, women's U.S. players of all time, now coached by Landon Donovan. I think that's pretty cool.
I like it. I like the opportunity that Donovan has to get back into coaching at not the MLS level, in terms of, just not falling into that sort of machine that is the MLS level in some way. He was coaching, the San Diego Loyal. It's unfortunate that club went down because I loved what they were doing. So he gets into a club that, is still in San Diego, a club that sort of has that sort of same vibe to it in terms of that coastal culture. So I do like that Donovan's there, and I'd like to see him there full time, even though I know that there are potentially some issues around Landon Donovan as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, because I think what I didn't like is how it leads to it of Casey Stoney kind of getting fired, because I think, again, unless she ends up with Canada, then of course we can't complain, but we'll see if that ever ends up happening. But it definitely does feel like San Diego's kind of like they've kind of just brushed everything under the rug in terms of those last few months and a bunch of how everything's gone down from Stoney to employees at the club, and it just feels like Donovan coming in is another one where I think Donovan, he's proven a lot with the San Diego Loyal. I thought it was really cool when they had that moment a few years ago. There's a huge racist incident, and Donovan really stood at the forefront and really helped be an ally in those sort of situations. I think that sort of stuff is great to see, but also from the NWSL's perspective, I don't know if it's too great to see one of their best coaches leave, and you come and you bring a very unproven men's coach who's only coached at the men's level. So I do think in that regard would be, I get having him in the league is a nice perspective, but I just think the San Diego situation in particular, there's a lot of moving pieces there I'm not a fan of.
The fact that he's like the second interim guy, though, with a definitive like interim tag, and maybe he wins the job like Rob Gale did, but like he's coming in with the expectation to just take them for the rest of the year. To me, it doesn't. It's not like him taking all the spotlight. Like they're trying to figure things out, and they obviously have been struggling. And maybe Stoney wasn't the problem, but yeah, there's a lot of layers to it. I agree with you though, and it would be great if Canada were able to woo Casey Stoney, if they are looking for a new head coach.
And since we're back to regularly scheduled programming as well, here's some key Canucks Abroad storylines proudly presented by our friends over at Canucks-Abroad. Make sure to check out their stuff over at CanucksAbroad.com and on socials at Canucks_abroad to keep up with all the Canadians playing domestically and overseas. And just a few of the big storylines. We're not going to give you the full big rundown. You can go to the Canucks Abroad Twitter to find that. But Jonathan David is on fire right now. He has scored in 3 straight games, including 2 crucial UCL qualifiers for Lille in their Liga opener and a 2-0 win over Rem. Lille are also now on the cusp of the UCL after winning Leg 1 of their final round qualifier over Slavia Prague 2-0, with David finding a goal and an assist in that one. And what to make of Jonathan David right now? It's been a strong start to the season, but for me at least, I just can't take him being in good form, knowing that it doesn't translate to Canada at this point.
I mean, that's
weird. That's a weird take for, hey, we're trying to get out the door here, and it's I'll go through these very fast. Oh, by the way, I hate that Jonathan David's good for club and not country.
He can be in good form, just like I can't get invested in it because it doesn't translate to Canada.
I mean, he still scored 2 goals, had an assist at Copa America. If that's his struggle, like I think there's a few other guys who would take that as their struggle. I think a few guys would take that as like their top level. And again, I was just looking back. I keep having Copa America stats pop up, and it's like, oh yeah, he was one of the best XG in the Copa America. He had some of the best chances. Ultimately, yeah, he missed a few chances that I'll want back, but overall, again, I will continue to. We don't have to go back into the whole Jonathan David and Kyle Larin partnership. We've let that air for a few months, and I think we'll let it air until the next window comes around and we see what the squad looks.
Clearly, Ben's got little T trauma here.
Yeah, you wanted to throw it back in.
Yeah. Next therapy session, Ben. We'll get to it in the next episode.
Because it's like, with Jonathan David as well for Canada, he still has a goal every other game for Canada, and he's proven to be a guy that at least as of late can come up and still give him a goal.
When Jonathan David bags a hat trick at the National Stadium in Toronto, all will be well against Panama.
Again, the bigger question is 5th year at Lille. Who would have seen that coming?
I did not expect that. Shocked. Hey, there's still 2 weeks. 10 days, 12 days in the window.
Well, he can't move to the CPL anymore or a Canadian MLS team because those windows are closed.
Yeah, I'll say it's more fascinating his hot start because then it's kind of the question of, is he so on fire right now because he wants to leave and he's like, guys, this is my push. Look, I am dragging you to Champions League so that you guys can have that money, sell me, move on, or is this a sign of like, I'm here, let me do my job, score as much as possible because I'm a free agent next year, and the more I score, the more clubs are going to look at me. It's kind of a twofold, and I think either scenario doesn't sound too bad. And that's the important thing of a striker. Sometimes you just need to score, and the rest will figure itself out. And what I'll say about Lille, a lot to like if they make the Champions League. Because I think Champions League, you're there. That's the pinnacle, right? Because if a lot of cases, like if David was going to go to a West Ham, no Champions League. So that's worth noting. The squad is pretty good. They've kept a lot of their big guns. Jurgova looks like he's going to have an incredible year. Remy Cabella was excellent in the game today. They signed Thomas Meunier. They've been looking at some other signings for their squad. They're going to be good. They'll push for Liga title. Like, it's not the worst scenario in the world. They hired new head coach Bruno Genosio, who used to coach my Rennes. So he was a good coach. He brought Rennes to the Champions League a few years back. Like, it's not a bad environment again. And I think the fact that he'll be leaving as a free next year, I've always said is not a bad scenario. I'd love to see him make that step up. But if this is his alternative, you have to remember, it's us all wanting him to leave Lille does not mean Lille's a bad situation. I think these last few weeks have shown that.
Agreed.
Derek Cornelius also made his Marseille debut, going 90 minutes in a 5-1 win over Brest. Thoughts on that game and Cornelius making his way right into the starting 11? No waiting for him.
Yeah, I mean, a bit circumstantial. A couple of Marseille defenders weren't I don't know if it was fitness, but one of them as well was suspended, so that kind of opened the door for Cornelius. But I think overall, there were some very hairy moments for those who watched the game. 7 minutes in the game, he gave up a penalty, and you're just thinking, like, wow, well, that's about as a nightmare of a scenario as you could get for a defender making your debut with a big club on that stage. But his goalie, Geronimo Rulli, bailed him out, made a great save. And what I liked with Cornelius, it was his response. Like, you could tell he was really rattled by that penalty. He was struggling with his passes. He looked a bit shook, and he just settled in. And by the end of the game, he was dominating in the air. His aerial duels win rate was ridiculous. He was just hoovering up balls in the air. His passing got a lot better. I think as a coach, you can see that. But you know what? Like, you like the response. And you have to remember, this is a guy making his first appearance in a league like this, for a club like this, against one of the top teams in France last year, because that's what Brest were. It's not unreasonable to suggest that he was going to take time to adapt. And I think the coaches will see his response and how he grew into the game and how he did what he's good at by the end of it and be excited. So it'll be tough for him to get minutes, and I'm curious to see what the path will be. We kind of touched on it on the last show. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of center backs at Marseille, but I think it's good that he had that first impression, that he was able to stick out the 90, grow as the game went on, and hopefully that's a sign for De Zerbi that, okay, you can count on Cornelius in these sorts of situations, even if it will take a bit of an adaptation period.
He's got a good opportunity to, like, carve out a place, though, right? And maybe he's not, the second choice, first second choice, but I think he'll work his way into rotation. They're going to have, not as many European games as they will in the future, but he's also a signing for the future too, right? So De Zerbi is someone that's going to make a mark there, even if he's only there for 1 year. I'm excited to see the two of them. So hopefully Cornelius gets some more minutes too. We all expect Cornelius will get a ton when he's healthy.
And Theo Bair also made his Liga debut in a 2-1 win over Nice. And Liam Miller had his first assist for Hull City in a 1-1 draw with Plymouth. Could this be what Miller needs for a big breakout this season?
Oh, yeah. I think Liam Miller wants to be in England, right? Like, I think he was great for Basel.
You've seen it for a while now, right? Like,
yeah, but I mean, I feel like Preston, he poured everything out there, and I wasn't watching every Basel game, so I can't say that, and nor did I watch every Preston game. But from what I did see, you can tell that it just means a little. I don't know, means a little more. It's a little more familiar. He would probably argue that he felt like he grew up there. With Liverpool, so to have the opportunity with Hull now, and they've got aspirations of going back to the Premier League, and they're a big club in the Championship. It's a good spot.
Yeah, I feel like he's built up to a great opportunity, a great moment. Like, going to Basel was important because he had to leave that kind of silo of you're out. Of course he's got family in England. It's familiar. You've gone up through the Liverpool academy. Going to Basel, it's uncomfortable, right? Especially. He's got a partner, a young kid, then another kid. Like, that's not easy for a young guy to deal with all that. I think it was, he got some real highs at Basel that first season where he scored 10 goals. And then you have some lows where you kind of lose your spot. You're asked to play as a wing back. All that stuff helps you learn, helps you grow. Then he goes to Preston last year. He kills it. Had a great season. But then again, more adversity. If you're having to play wing back, you're in the mix of a promotion fight. What I like is that this ticks a lot of the boxes he'll want in a club. First, he's there permanently. Like, he's at Hull for the first time in a year and a half, 2 years. There's stability of knowing you're a Hull player. They paid a lot of money for you. They like what you are. You're playing back at your natural position. It's left wing. That's something that's obviously been a big thing for Miller, where you've been having to play wing back. You've been having to play right, left. No, he's playing left wing. That's his spot. He's there to hold down that role. And he's on a club pushing for promotion that obviously has aspirations of returning to what they once were. I think those are all factors that are great for a player. You have to remember, it is like 24, 25 in that kind of prime age. I'm excited. And I think this him getting this assist, because he had a bit of a late adaptation period because there were so many rumors, but he didn't actually sign until 2 weeks ago. I think this move could really yield a very, I'm thinking this could be a 5 to 10 goal, 10 assist kind of season for Miller. Nice. And I think that would be huge for him if they can push for promotion and be huge for his confidence for Canada.
And of course, if you want the full roundup on Canucks Abroad, you can visit their website at canucksabroad.ca as well as their Twitter. But lastly, of course, Brendan, you celebrated the start of another Premier League season with Aston Villa, and it came away with a win. Your thoughts on that one quickly?
Oh, man, let me tell you. Onana is a player, man. I love everything that's happening at Villa right now. It's still surreal. I cannot wait for the Champions League schedule to come out. I can't wait to see how this group stage table will play out for them. And I think I got to plan a trip. It's been a minute. I think it's going to shape up for early November. Then he goes back to Villa Park.
See, Ben's opened up a dangerous can of worms, and of course he asked you about Aston Villa. Rennes beat Lyon 2-0. No, I don't have to talk about Rennes, but I'll just say open up a dangerous can of worms with the Villa chatter.
I just like the way you say Rennes with like the triple rolled R's there.
Yeah.
C'est bon.
Stade Rennais.
Oh, man, I got to listen to more of your Le Soccer show.
Le Bundesliga Canadien. That's all we've got for episode 189 of Northern Football here. Of course, Brendan and Alex back in studio and bringing the banter with them. And myself a little bit far away, weirdly in Toronto, it feels like. But we'll be back next week. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe, all that jazz. And we'll be back on the next episode of NFP 190.
Excusez, mon ami.